Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. I am so pleased to have with me today Tina Clements, who is Vice President of the Retail Performance Company. I am so impressed by Tina. I met her last year, and it was a coaching community of practice conversation. Her message landed with me so well that I approached her after the session and said, Tina, you must be on the podcast. And fast forward, here we are today. Tina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, my friend. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you're currently doing.
Well, first of all, thank you again, sincerely. And it was spectacular to meet you as well. You know, when people meet and you just feel that level of positive energy, you can't help but want to be surrounded by them. So this is really amazing that we are doing. And it was almost a year ago, I think, something like that. So it's just a testament to us and the energy and positivity and all that kind of great stuff. So what I do is I have been leading an organization called the Retail Performance Company, or RPC, since, my goodness, I can't even believe it, May 1st of 2013. So almost 7 years. And we are a joint venture with the BMW Group, a 50-50 joint venture. So we are an independent organization that was created to, at first, support our dealers, BMW, Mini, Rolls-Royce, etc., with by helping them as organizations to get out of their own way and assess what their pain points are. And then through training, coaching, consulting, and HR services, provide solutions to help them elevate, to help them find profitability. But we do all of that through employee engagement. So the BMW organization years ago realized that, yes, of course they were successful, but they could be even more successful if they were focusing on the core assets at their organization, which is people. What do we need to do to support our people? So we launched, and of course, at first we supported our BMW brothers and sisters. And we realized pretty quickly that this incredible integral knowledge and experiences that we had could support organizations outside of BMW. So while our title, our company name is Retail Performance Company, we are actually a performance company. We support companies like Coach, Coty, Verizon, these amazing companies that, quite frankly, have nothing to do with automotive, but they all have people, and that's what we do. We help people's performance from the inside out. And I got to tell you, it is, I've been in automotive technically now for over 20 years, but it's the people. I've been in the people business my entire career, and I just love it. We have a team of about 30 people in the United States, and the company has about 400 globally in 10 different countries. And it's really exciting. And that's what brought me to you that fine day last year, as a matter of fact.
That's awesome. So tell our listeners, what is your secret? Let's jump right to the formula for owning your career. What is the secret sauce? What is the formula for owning your career?
I think for me personally, it was owning the fact that there are no such thing as mistakes, only discoveries. Because Simone, if you decide to look at life as mistakes, then, oh my God, my path. If I was Dorothy, the yellow brick road would be littered with yellow bricks. I tell you, I've made quite a few, but it's your attitude when you are taking the risk to know that this probably won't work, but we're going to try it anyway. So for my personal secret sauce is to jump and know that the net will appear. the how will be figured out. You have to keep moving. You have to keep trying and acknowledge that, sure, you're afraid of failing, fear of being embarrassed, fill in the blank of whatever the fear might be for you, but to do it anyway. That has been my secret. That's been my algorithm. It took me a long time to figure that out, I will tell you, but that without question has been my secret to success, for sure.
So many things, Tina, were coming up for me when you were talking. Number one, I don't know if you know about the late Dr. Susan Jeffers. She's got a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And when you were saying that, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so Susan Jeffers, because that book has gotten me through a lot of stuff around moving forward despite the fear. And I think that's important, because some of us get immobilized. We can't move forward, right? And the other thing I heard you say is risk. So talk to us about how you have dealt with risk in your career and how to embrace it, partner with it for career success.
This is not going to be a really well accepted answer, but this is my answer: is you just have to do it. And because so now I am 50. And I guess we can share that, right? I just turned 50 last year. So I was in my early 40s when we started RPC, and I will say honestly, throughout all of my 30s and into my early 40s, I didn't take the risks that I look back. If I had taken them, then I who knows where I could be, I would be, where the company would be, etc. And the reason I didn't take them was that fear factor. So the only way to be okay with it is to start to do it. It's like anything else. It's like muscle memory. It's like learning to dance. It's like learning to sew. It's going to be so painful. Sewing is right? You're going to prick yourself. You're going to bleed. All of these. So you just have to do it and experience what that feels like. Because when you do it the next time, it will not hurt as much. So that sounds very warm and fuzzy and patchouli oil smelling and all that good stuff. What is that real? How do we relate that into real life? So the risks I take currently in my company could be hiring somebody without having being able to fulfill the need for them. In other words, utilization rate. And I will tell you, we are owned, this company, yes, we're here in the United States and we are an LLC. However, we are owned by our mother company located in Germany. And I do have to answer to this greater power. But there are times when I say, we're going to just do this and take a risk. And I might get it wrong, but we're going to do it because it's right for us right now. I feel good about this person and I've been wrong. I'm going to say it flat out. I've been wrong. However, you take the wrong, okay, I hired wrong. Whoops, I hired wrong. Okay, so you heal that, you take care of it, and then you learn for the next time. Or perhaps I hired, and this has happened to us as well. I have hired, as an example, and it took me 1 year and 3 months to utilize that person. However, I was able to grow this person in the RPC colors and get them to know our company and who we are and our spirit. And then when I finally did deploy this human and they are fully utilized now, I have this ideal product, so to speak. So the pain dissipates and the reward will come. So it's not a sexy answer, but it's to just do it and know that you won't die. Nobody's going to die. That's it. Just do it. And if the final point about that is it might tax you financially. That's the scariest part, especially when you have your own business. And I am responsible for these 30 people and I'm responsible for their children and everything else. But what I will tell you, what has always happened, perhaps there is a short-term loss, but there has always been a long-term gain every single time. So that is my very long-winded answer to your question, which is you have to just do it. I hope that answered the question.
No, it does. Of course, now I'm thinking about Nike. Yes. No, It does. Absolutely. And I love the short-term, long-term reframing, right? To just have things in perspective. Of course, it's hard when you're in it, just trying to do that and you're worried about money, etc. I think what I want to do next is really just take a step back and have you tell us a little bit about your career highlights. So, I know where you are now, but just how you got there and how you got to position yourself in the driver's seat. Let's have that conversation.
I love this question because I don't think about it often, and it's funny. It was littered with risk. So after graduating from college, so of course this was 100 years ago, I don't think I showed up like graduates do today, which is to have a plan. I had no plan. I walked out of college and went back to my parents' house and went, so what are you guys doing? And then realized I have no plan. I have no job. I have no plan. And so I started to just knock on doors, literally. And I knocked on the door of a radio cable station on a Saturday, and the general manager happened to be there and said, yeah, you want to be the receptionist? And I was like, yes, please. I did. And that's how I got my first job. So I started there, and then he, of course, very small company, he threw me into sales and put me on the radio and did all these different things. So I just did it because you can. And I fell into communications. I was a communications major, but I fell into it. And from there was a friend, John, who was working at the radio station. He left to go to HBO, and he went there. And then he said to me, hey, there's a job here you'd be really good at. Do you want to do that? And it was managing trade shows. So I'd be out there and get it. So I took that job. And then from there, within HBO, they tapped me on the shoulder and said, I feel like you could be a trainer. Are you interested? And the next thing you know, I fell into facilitation. And that was the turning point for me at HBO. And it taught me the art of how to communicate your message at an adult level and how to get people to retain. And that started the journey of my passion for employee engagement and learning and development and psychology around it, and the chemical brain reactions and the science and all of the things. And then from there, Simone, everything was a tap on the shoulder and a risk. So from there, it was Volkswagen. Hey, this is this great job. What do you know about cars? And I said, I can spell it. I know there's an engine in there. And they took a risk on me, and I took a risk on them, and I loved it. And from there, a boutique, very small training company out of Arizona said, hey, would you? And I said, I just kept saying yes to whatever new opportunity came along, including RPC. And then the real learning point, I think for me, is when I was working for BMW of North America. Incredible job in human resources. It was ideal for me. I got tapped on the shoulder by the director of human resources at BMW, and said, hey, this is a long shot, but BMW is looking to start this company. It's crazy. It's a joint venture. It's training, coaching, consulting. You'd be leading it. Are you interested? And I said yes before he put the PowerPoint pamphlet in front of my face. And then it was the worst decision of my life. So that was the turning point, because it was this massive risk, and I am so ready, fire, aim. I took it. And then that's the biggest lesson I learned as I launched my career and launched the retail performance company, launched the company, is how big of a failure I believed I was, because I had no business starting a business. So taking the risks got me there. And then I forgot all of those lessons and took no more risks. I was terrified, and I believed I was too stupid. I believed that I didn't have the background and this and that, and spent the next months sabotaging my own self until I realized and shifted and got coaching and did all the things necessary to shift it, and realized that the world was my oyster, and then blew it up and have on some level surrounded our entire company from the learnings that I experienced those first months launching RPC. So it was a very serendipitous, karmic road littered with risks and fear, but ultimately listening to the lessons that were presented that got me to you today. Thanks for asking that question, because I have not talked about this in a really long time, and that's interesting. Really, really interesting.
So good. I love it. I love it on so many levels. What is coming up for me, Tina, is what was it that caused you to realize that you needed to take control of the messaging that you were giving to yourself about I'm a failure and I can't handle this, etc., all that other, what was it? What was the game-changing thing that said, I've got to get a handle on this. I've got to turn this around and make it work?
It's so it's not only was this moment in time a game changer, I have written a keynote speech around it. And before you and I got on this conversation, I am writing a book to support it. And it was a moment. I quit. I actually one day found myself this really happened weeks into the role, probably about 3 weeks, in my home on my living room floor, writing my resignation letter to my boss, Christian, in Germany. And practice it, rehearse it, got him on the phone because I had a revelation one morning. I was like, why are you so afraid? You can just leave. You can leave. So I got him on the phone and I did the whole thing and kind of spiraled in my speech to him. And at the end I said, so Christian, wouldn't you agree that me resigning is really the best thing for RPC? And he said, yeah, no, Tina, but thank you very much for the call. You are so nice. Okay, I talk to you Monday. You feel better after the weekend. Bye. So he said, no. He said no to me, Simone. I said, what? And then I said to myself, well, what the heck happened? I think you're still employed. Like, what happened? So it was in that moment I went, well, if you can't leave it, you have no other choice but to be successful. Because Tina, you can't not be successful. Something just triggered in my brain. And then I happened to be getting my certification to become a coach at that point. So I was reaching out for support and I was getting the support and I was getting the life lessons that I needed and in a way that I hadn't heard them before. And I was just doing the work, to be honest. I decided to do the work. And some of it was subconscious and some of it was conscious, but that was the moment where I was like, you're in. You can't be out, so now you got to be in. And then I started to do what I do, which is to take risks. And I just started to do things and ask for sales. And my favorite moment was I had no bank at that point. I had no bank. I couldn't pay anybody. I had no connection to money, to finances. So I called an old friend of mine, Doreen Parsons, who had done some content development for me in the past. And I said, hey, are you open to working for me for 4 months with no money? And then I'll pay you, once we get the gig and the whole thing. And she said, yes, just yes. And I went, oh, okay, let's do it. And then from there, it was another yes, and it was another yes. And lots of failures, and we did things wrong, but I just kept jumping and the net kept appearing. So it was that moment I had to leave it for the mirror to be put up to my face and go, no, that's not an option. And thank God the universe took over and said, no, 9, no, you cannot quit. And had it been another person, they might have accepted my resignation. So I do thank God that it was Christian and he said no and the whole thing. And the story is hilarious 7 years later. But I would say that really was the eye opener for me. You are in it. So be in it and stop being so afraid.
There are so many titles for your podcast episode. There are so many things that I'm thinking right now. Number one, I'm thinking I want to read the book when it's ready. And I had a visual of Eat, Pray, Love when you said you were laying on the floor writing your resignation. I was like, this is like Eat, Pray, Love. Like it's going to be one of those movements. So I love it. And I'm ready to read the book. And I just love the message that I love the transparency, the human element that you're sharing in this interview, because we often don't see that with the leaders. And so thank you for inviting us in, trusting us, and just sharing your authentic self. That I appreciate.
That's all you, my friend.
The other thing that I heard you say is the realization that you can leave.
Yes. And you know what? Sometimes that is the right choice. However, I was running from my choice. The consequence of me leaving would have been failure for me. That would have been my consequence. And the universe got involved because I truly believe that. And through Christian, who said, no, I'm not accepting your resignation, really there was an intervention. It was a divine intervention. I really believe that. Because you have 5 choices. And once I made the choice to shift my perspective and accept this is my reality, this is the role, this is the resources I do or do not have, Now I'm going to do something to change it, which is another choice entirely. And that's the consequence that I wanted to live. And that's what it comes down to. Whenever you hit a roadblock, whenever you hit this pain point and say, I don't have a choice, you don't understand. That's when you know. When you say the words out loud, well, I don't have a choice. You do. Right. You always do. There's 5. And you might not like the consequence of the choice, but you do have a choice. So make the right one for you. So leaving it, and quick story, I have a colleague, an old colleague, who was working in a wildly toxic environment at her old company, and chose to leave with no sight of another role. And that sounds really scary, but the consequence for her was unbelievably healthy. It was a terrible, terrible place for her to be. And she made the right choice. She wasn't running from, she was going to. And that's what you really have to accept. So for me, that was the wrong choice for me. But I like your interpretation. It is a choice. We can leave it. It's okay. And if I may, another thing, it's when you talk about leaving it, when we don't leave, it's relationships. And I'm not talking about marital relationships or a partner. I'm talking work relationships. And that's what this particular friend of mine had done, is that relationship. She felt like she couldn't leave them or like whatever, but no, she left and she is healthier as a direct. We do this with friends. I've heard it said, you are the direct result of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time. And I actually believe that. And sometimes those people are toxic. Well, it's okay to leave. Matter of fact, you need to leave. That's beneficial for you. The consequence is health for you. But it's hard because you feel like in your mind it's your friends, So that was a really long-winded way to say, I agree with you, Simone.
Yeah.
Yes, leaving it is a choice.
Well, I wanted to distinguish because I hear, in the coaching space, I hear people feeling like they do not have a choice. And so I wanted to hone in when you said that was one of the options on the table, leaving. But yes. I found that my path was going to be a different one. So I just wanted to stop and explore that, unpack that for a moment, which I feel is valuable to the audience to hear.
Yes.
Just your story is simply amazing. The commonalities that we have, it's just amazing as well, because I was thinking about the coaching element and doing the work. That is exactly what coaching does to you. Because I remember taking a sabbatical from work because I really wanted to quit. So my out was, telling the HR business partner that I wanted a sabbatical and hearing them say yes, which I was like, what? So I took a 3-month unpaid sabbatical to regain myself. And that's when I found coaching. And back to your point, why I'm bringing this up is because I had to do a lot of work on myself, and I discovered a lot of things about myself that was helpful for me. I actually returned because it wasn't the right time to exit, even though I eventually exited. But it just
that is so brave. That is so brave, and that goes back to the risk part, where that is because you weren't leaving it per se, but you were snoozing it. You were taking a break from it. But financially, that's a big risk. And you need to do that to then ultimately reap the benefits later. Have you ever read the book, Don't Eat the Marshmallow Yet?
No, it sounds good.
Oh, my. Joaquim de Posado, to make it sound more authentic, is the author. But the book is based on a series of videos that were shot. I want to say, now don't quote me, anybody listening, please, oh my goodness, Google this. About 60 years ago. And what they did was they took 150, and it was a Latin country. Now I can't remember the country, but they took these about 600 children around 7 years old, 5 to 7 years old. You take them into a room and then you say, okay, Sally, I'm going to give you this marshmallow. This marshmallow is yours. Now, I'm going to leave for about 15 minutes. If I come back and you have not eaten that marshmallow, I'm going to give you this second marshmallow. Oh my goodness. So it's hilarious. Now, if you Google this, everybody, there are some videos and they're hilarious. 70% of the children ate the marshmallow. Some ate the marshmallow before the guy was out the door. He was like, okay.
My daughter, I'm thinking about her right now and her love of marshmallows. I feel like she would eat it right away.
So you and I are the same because I watched my daughter eat it as I was talking. I'm like, I'm still trying to explain to you. Okay, forget it. So, but 30% of the children did not eat the marshmallow. So about 25-ish years later, they found around 150 of these kids. Of the kids who did not eat the marshmallow, they were successful, some wildly successful. Of the kids who did eat the marshmallow, some were dead, some were in prison, some were successful, but not at the level of the other children. Why? It's all about the art of delayed gratification. And the reason I bring this up right now, and number one, it's okay. If you were a child that would have eaten the marshmallow, because I would have, this is a learned behavior. You can learn this. That's number one. So that's the good news. Number two, what you did was you delayed gratification because you could have said, no, I can't not keep doing my job because I need the security of a paycheck. I need to be doing. You said, no, I need to do some long-term work to get, or I need to do some work to get this long-term benefit. And it's hard because the marshmallow is right there. Your job is right there. If you're in an organization and you lose a person, then you think, oh my God, I have to fill that spot. I have to fill this. No, take a minute. What do you really need? What's the ideal human to put in that place? Do we need the job at all? Should we rewrite the job? Whatever it is, take a minute and delay the gratification of instantly doing what you think needs to be done. And again, boy, listeners, I am the most long-winded guest I'm sure Simone has ever had, but that's the whole point. And it's a good book to read. It's pretty quick, and it just kind of draws out a little bit more around gratification and whatnot.
Awesome. I have so many books to read. I definitely will look this one up. Absolutely. I have a couple more questions for you. One is, tell our listeners, what advice would you give to someone wanting to own their career?
Own their career doesn't necessarily mean own their business, I would think, right?
No,
because
it
you
doesn't.
can still be
being in control of your career and not being hands off and letting others call the shots, but being invested and involved and sort of being in control of the direction, saying yes, as you did before, to these different opportunities that were presented.
Right. Well, especially if you're working in a corporation, BMW is a massive organization. Volkswagen, I worked for them, massive organization. Is to network, is to proactively. And for some of us, it's hard because we're shy or we don't feel like we have the right to reach out to that big vice president in the corner office. Do it anyway. Just do it. And do it your way. Don't do it like somebody else would, but proactively. Get on the calendar for the head of human resources and go, can I have 15 minutes? And it's not about, what can you do for me? It's, hey, I just wanted you to know who I am. And this is what I can do for the organization. And hey, Mrs. HR person, I wanted to learn a little bit more about you. 15 minutes. Now you're in their Rolodex. That's all. And make an effort to do it. This is the choice piece. This is the, I don't have time for that. I'm such a bit, you do. Is what choice do you want to make? Do you want to be a victim around it and say, I don't have time to do it? Or say, no, I'm going to shift my perspective here and take a chance and reach out and be active on LinkedIn and all of these other things. It is an action. When I was in human resources, that was the number one interaction I would have on a daily basis. Somebody would come to me and say, this place isn't fair. I'm missing the opportunity to be promoted, XYZ. And I would say, hi, my name's Tina. Who are you? I have no idea who you are. It's your responsibility to make yourself known to me. It's not our responsibility. It sounds very harsh, but it is not an organization's job it should be, but it's not likely that an organization is going to actively be looking to get to know everybody in their companies. So you got to work. You got to make that would really be my biggest piece of advice, especially within these big corporations where some millennials, or not even millennials, but people starting out, they're trying to make a name for themselves. Do the work.
Sure. And then how about resources that you have found to be valuable to you in owning your career? It could be online or otherwise.
Resources. Wow, so many. I don't read as much as I should. TED Talks and snippets and video. I have a few books that I could throw out there for sure. And Susan Jeffers, I think I wrote that down right away in hopes that I'll be. I will tell Amy Cuddy, of course, Simon Sinek, all of what I do, not even proactively, they just come to me, is I make time to watch. And there's all of these nuggets that inspire, but I find myself using, whether it be in conversation, as I facilitate whatever courses that we're facilitating or whatever it is. Honestly, I find that's the biggest support for me personally. And the other, I don't know if you would call this a resource, Simone, but honestly, you have to be social after work. Mm-hmm. I hate to say, when I talk about learning in this, we'll lean on BMW. When I was working for the BMW North America organization, I made it, especially when I was in human resources, I made it a point to socialize when and whenever I could after. And that too is a challenge, but the resource came in the form of intel. And the resource came in the form of what was happening within the inner culture and the inner workings of and I can't even tell you how much of a value add. And if you're trying to break into an organization or even an industry, find out where the subculture hangs out and try to live in that space. That is a really valuable resource, I believe, for everybody as they try to grow and shift. Ooh, that's a good question. That was a really good question.
Well, I was thinking that's a really valuable nugget that you just dropped, because there are a lot of people that aren't taught that. I know in my experience in the corporate space, I was battling with my culture. I'm from Jamaica, and I sort of disappeared after I did my job, or I wasn't one of those water cooler conversations or let's go up to the bar but I did notice the people that were doing those things, they had that intel because they were the ones moving and I was staying where I was. So I just think that is just a gem that you just dropped, really.
Yep. And I learned it. I was the same as you. It's just, I would just do my job and go home. And my daughter, this, and my whatever it was. Nope. Yeah. Even if it takes, and it actually is harder to do that than to read a book, because that can right? You have to schedule time and you have to make efforts, and some of us have to get babysitters and it's worth the effort. That is a big resource. Yeah. Good question. Really good question.
Thank you. This has been such a delightful interview. I don't want it to end. And I'm sure my listeners, I'm sure they're thinking, no, don't end. You are going to be on the best of for sure, because this has been so good.
You're amazing. I love you. You're great.
Thank you so much, Tina. But before we go, please tell our listeners how to connect with you. What's the best way to connect with you?
Super. My direct email address is tina.clements@rpc-partners.com. It is the longest / worst email address on the planet. Our website is rpcamerica.com, and you can find us. You can link to me that way as well. And I would love to hear from anybody listening. Truly, it would be my honor.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, please remember that you can go on LinkedIn. We have a group for the podcast so we can continue the conversation there. Tina, it has been an honor and a pleasure having you as a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Thank you so, so much. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.